Good evening, everybody. Welcome here at the practicing hours. It's been a long time since we've done our latest was with the Bach Sinfonias, and we didn't finish it, in fact. So, but now it's Mozart month, so we're diving into Mozart sonatas, München sonatas, Skakelverzeichnis 283 and 282 today. So, welcome Markio, Gain Harmonics, Robin, nice to see you. Carl, nice to see you. World Towning, Wood and Jessica, wonderful to have you here. I was in fact just watching your latest video before preparing this live stream, so you have a very addicting channel about traveling. Check it out. I would say really, really nice. And Pablo, welcome. Mikael, thank you also for your mail on Patreon. I haven't replied, but it's good to know that it works. So Anya's mail is not coming through, but yours is, so I don't know what's it, but it's nice to know that the mail notification there works, in fact. And then Mak Zonagan, I don't know if I pronounced that correct, but welcome here. We're going to, I hope so, have a lot of questions. If not, I'm just rambling for 1 hour, as you're used to hear me rambling a lot about this music, and there is so much that we could cover. Perhaps this session we would dedicate to the G minor and the E flat major. So the G minor is coming on Tuesday. I just have to finish editing that, and then of course the last one, which is a very big sonata, the D major. That will be recorded not Thursday, but next Thursday, and that will be online as a last piece music recording this month. And there will be one live practicing hour in 2 weeks about this piece, and we can mix it with the other pieces as well. It doesn't matter, it's all the same language, so to say. So if you have questions, I will be reading them. Anya is in the chat if her computer is working.
Yes.
She is working. You can see her actually. She doesn't know, but I have prepared.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I prepared the second camera. So
I can see myself.
there is a kind of delay on the live stream. But anyway.
Okay.
You see it? So, why else were you thinking I was cleaning the table there? It was full of, was really a mess. Okay, we're going to start. Enough talking. I'm diving into that. I put the tablet computer here so that I can read your questions. If I miss something, I will shout and make sure that I notice your question. So there we go. One thing I would like to share with you about this music of Mozart, and it's very important, and also for me, I've done number 1, 2 and 3 earlier. In fact, one of the first pieces I uploaded for Authentic Sound. And by the way, I'm going to do them again next month. So this Mozart project, we will extend it with 1 month, because I think we should do number 1, 2 and 3 again, to create the unity. And I wasn't aware of that when I was playing those pieces 2 years ago, but now very much, and it's by coincidence the relationship between that music and the opera, that's very strong. And in fact, it's with all that music is in that time written in the Gallant style, and before, in fact, any music, in fact, written for instrument is a kind of imitation of the voice. That's the most natural instrument, in fact, that we have. And keyboard instruments, clavichords or harpsichords or organs, whatever, they are always a kind of imitation of another instrument of the voice, and we tend to forget it sometimes. So you have rarely pure keyboard instrument. Of course, it fits the keyboard very well. That's the technical side, but the imitation of other instruments and certainly of the voice is very strong, and certainly here in these Munich sonatas. And it shouldn't surprise us, in fact, because Mozart, of course, wanted to make an impression on possible new people that would buy this music or that he could work for. So he wrote in the common style, the gallant style of that time, and he did several things that we're going to cover. But the imitation of the singing, of the voice, of the opera is very important, very present here. I wanted to connect that with another point, but I'm missing that now. We come to that later. So, if I remember. So the imitation of the voice is something you can never imitate really 100%. Because if I start, for instance, to play the fourth sonata, the B flat, it's even not possible, even not on the clavichord. Once you have attacked that note, once that note sounds, there is nothing you can do anymore. So a singer can make a crescendo, even a string player could make a crescendo, so make a more close imitation of the voice. So this is very important to work with timing, but the idea of a voice in your back of your mind is very helpful. So also with a little bit this extra drama. I think that music can have that. And speaking about tempo, should be careful these days talking about tempo. Not on YouTube, by the way. Shouldn't look my name on Facebook and you will read terrible, no, not terrible things, but discussion there is a little bit heated, so to say. But if you consider this adagio to be played in 8 notes, and even slow 8-note structure, we could cover that, but we could cover notation then. It would maybe take us a little bit too far for this session. I will do that in the future. Connect the notation system, which is actually basically very simple, to the metronome numbers, and that's the way I approach it always. So I'm not coming from the metronome numbers, take it as an absolute number, and then try to play the music whatever it is written. The notation is the most important thing, and in an adagio notation you slow down, of course, compared to the tempo ordinario. And there I go with the notation. It's but yeah, very short, the tempo ordinario, which is about 60. This is second, and it should not surprise us that it's the second. It's very close to us, was always been. And in the video I've made on the third movement here, I've said that, but if you missed that, it's really true that if you teach children who start to be able to play some pieces, they almost always play an exact 60. That's something that's physically very close to us. So the 60 is the tempo ordinario for the normal common time 4/4 bar structure with no time indication, with a normal harmonic progression, not too dense, and with a note value system that's not over the 16th note. So once you do that, like here you have a 4/4 note bar structure, but it's indicated adagio, but if it wasn't, we should see, because the 32nd notes should indicate a slower tempo. So adagio means in fact slower than the tempo ordinario, and then of course you have a range of possibilities, and one player will play it a little bit faster, the other will play it a little bit slower. But you certainly, in a piece like this, with a very many indications also regarding articulation and slurs, you'll find in this piece, and there is a link in the description box if you want to watch the score, the IMSLP link, so you can download the score. You find accentuated notes, like for instance here. So this is a 16th note, this F, with an accent, and also meaning that it loses some of the value, so it's not played legato with the next note. So it's obviously need time for that, And so you slow down the tempo compared to the tempo ordinario. And then you come in an 8-note structure, where the 8th note is in fact the basis, the basic note value. But again, that would lead us too much to cover that now. But let's assume that it is. Then you go in the beginning. And that's very slow, but that's adagio, you know. So then connected to that, the voice imitation. In this adagio setting, you can have these very rhetorical accents. And listen what happens then. I can end the sentence very, very natural then. That's, at least to me, gives such a beautiful feeling of peace, of as if everything comes together again. So there's a bow of tension only over 1 bar and a half, and we reach that not by, and that's a danger if you start playing these pieces. And I'm not reading the chat. In fact, I should, but if you start playing in this kind of tempi that you want to have this tension bow over the bar structure, which is a little bit like you would have in the second half of the 19th century with the tempo rubato. You would get something like that. And you feel already how this increases the tempo. And that's one of my points I will make in the future more, that by when we start looking back to the origin of the historical performance of that time, let's say we were in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and we had, of course, a very strong, still today, generation of pianists and orchestras who played all that music. And we started, of course we liked things about their performances, but we started to do things differently. Not we, not I, but in general, the people who so-called first generation of historically informed players, they started to do things differently. And a lot of things were true, but some things also, I believe, were just maybe unconsciously to distinct themselves from what was before. So and tempo is something they discovered, so to say, these metronome numbers. And in fact, instead of studying them and what really was meant by them, the only thing, I think, that's what I believe, as I understand it, is that they recognized that these metronome numbers were faster than what the pianists were playing at the time. So they said, okay, we have to increase the tempo, because that's a kind of historical approach. And that's the pity, because I believe it's the other way around. It should be a little bit slower. And then you have this metrical feel, and that's my point, that you just have this tension bow within the heavy beat and the light beat. It's so beautiful. And then you can give all freedom you want to the voice, to the melody. The timing of the first note is of the utmost importance. If you just play this, nothing happens. Just a small movement of the wrist and making that B flat a little bit longer. And you get an effect of very seriousness. What an adagio is not always, but here is about. It's very serious talking. Also in the left hand. Also here a bow, F, D, and a bow on the D, B flat. Listen now to the relief of the 16 notes. Very dramatic. And now 17 years. So 17, 18 years Mozart, it's incredible. Also listen the differentiations between piano and forte. They were very much wanted in that time. And I now remember what I wanted to say about the opera. I happened just to reread Charles Burney's Travels to Europe. If you're not familiar with that book, I believe you find a copy online. The English version, it's been translated in many languages, even in the 18th century. So Charles Burney was a musician, musicologist, who wanted to write an extensive history of music, and many people were doing that at the time, like Forkel as well. And Forkel was, of course, very much related to the Bach tradition. But Charles Burney, he traveled throughout whole Europe, which was an incredibly undertaking in that time. And he went from France, what was France, then to Italy, and came back Vienna, Germany, and in Germany he met C.P.E. Bach, which was, of course, is a brilliant passage. So we learn a lot about that, and we learn also, for instance, that the differentiation between piano and forte on keyboard instrument was something hot, was really wanted. He came in Berlin, where was still Quantz, so the traverse player, with at the royal court, and he said, Burney, well, the orchestra plays very well, but it's so dull. They play everything on the same dynamic. They don't make differentiations between piano and forte. And you hear often him, and it's the same time as this Munich sonatas, you hear him often say, or compliment the player who really could do fortes and pianos. So Mozart really wanted to do that because it was in the time. So he adapted to the style. And so you have this piano, and then suddenly forte. Suddenly piano, forte, piano. And here I take time, and it's like in an opera singer would take time, would not care about the orchestra, and then the orchestra just waits. Also to make a different shading, different effect, different emotion. Wait a little bit longer with the B flat. Also here. E flat against E, natural, people should hear it, it should hurt really. So, and the bars like this are also an indication of the speed limits. We talk about that a lot, and Leopold Mozart writes in his book, so there's a father of Mozart who wrote a Violinschule, a treatise to how to play the violin, 1756, and he says there's always a passage in a piece where you find a kind of limit to the tempo where you in fact cannot go faster, and this is such a place you can play it faster, but it needs time to come to an end. And such a note, I think you can hold them as long as the tension holds. And now really opera-like. And I would do a little bit of vibrato. Works well. So instead of just playing this, I would add a little bit more salt and pepper. Also here, the last two 16th notes you have accent. So you need time for that. Also here, time. accents. Bum, bum, bum. And always here, all these notes are bows. So on the first note, under a bow, under a slur, needs to have an accent. And an accent also in here means a little bit of emphasis, a little bit of, it's not rubato, but a little bit more time. That's too much. Piano. So only here in a bar like that, you need time to prepare that. You cannot. So the highest B flat should be the ultimate reach of that sentence. And then suddenly forte and very cantabile. Very legato also. And here, for instance, bar 14, you have 30-second note. The G, so the upper note, has an accent and it's not played legato with the C. This has a slur. So you have to, on that 30-second note, you have to give an accent and make it separate from the next note. So again, it's something, it's a place you need time to do that. So here goes the voice and real rhythmical interaction with the orchestra. The orchestra is the left hand and is preparing for the end, or for the bridge for the second part. And so here it's wonderful, forte, and suddenly piano. You feel the tension then. It's so wonderful. And again, that's such a passage. You come from 30-second notes and Mozart really drops the movement completely. He is brilliant in that. He does it always. And I mean, just speeding up by increasing the note value and then buff, it's over. But what he does with that is creating an island of silence, of peace, and you should really have the courage to not stand still, because that will kill the music, but feel this very slow pulse then. And then you get effects like this. Oh, the B flat is out of tune, okay. Forte. Piano. Crescendo. And then wait. And there you have the 16 notes in the left hand again. Preparing for the voice. And also the left hand, I should not maybe tell, but you know it, but it's over legato. Play it as long as you can. Perhaps if you play on a modern piano, it will be too much, but on a historical keyboard, where you play it on a piano forte, harpsichord or clavichord, just hold the notes. he continues. So that's gorgeous music. And the more you dive into that, the better it becomes. Incredibly well written. And so, and again, talking about temporal notation as a final word on this movement, and Anya will warn me if there's something in the chat. Okay, so I can leave it a little bit. So, I haven't checked the metronome number for this. And we can do it now. Where's my phone?
Oh, the phone is here.
My phone, there is a metronome on my phone, which is no discussion that it's correct. So we can check it. I have a modulus number. So just in case, I hope I... Oh boy. 96 he writes. I think that's a little bit slower even than I play. Just out of curiosity. So I never check. Now let me say the metronome numbers for that we got from people like Moscheles and Czerny and Hummel, and you have hundreds of them, thousands of them. For me, they are very important in a way that those people were very close to this music. Certainly Moscheles, I mean, he knew Beethoven. Czerny was a student of Beethoven, so they were in this classical music, classical style, old style. Czerny maybe a little bit. Oh, they all made progression, but they knew the tradition. So at least for me, the importance of those numbers is that it's like Moscheles and Czerny is talking to you. Imagine that he would walk into this room, and that's something that's an image that I always have. People that we can read information from so long ago. Imagine that you would talk to them. They would give you the same information. So that's direct input from that time. So I often check my tempi against theirs, and if it's way off, I start reflecting what might be wrong, but often it's very close. Let's see here. So his tempo would be in the metrical tradition. A little bit slower than maybe. Actually, this is more adagio. And then, of course, adding a little bit of tempo rubato to that. Very little. Nobody plays like this in the metronome. I think that I play a little bit faster than this, but not much. If we would play this according to the single beat notation, we would have this. Not saying that you cannot make music out of that, but that's definitely not an adagio, and you would miss a lot of the effects. Also affects, not only affects, but also affects. For instance here. So again, yeah. Don't tell people on Facebook. And then you have the minuet, which is a kind of relief piece in between. Let's just play a few bars. It's a big contrast. Orchestra. Solo. Orchestra. Violin. Full orchestra. And about the ornaments, I'll make a video about that, on that. Not next week, but the week after. Okay, and then the G major. See It's 10 o'clock. Okay, we have some time. The G major is also a wonderful piece. I shouldn't say that because it's obvious. It's Mozart. But it's a very strange piece as well. And in a way, the first movement, so this one, so the strange thing is that you have an accent on the upbeat. So the upbeat is dum, da, dum. If you wouldn't have written the B, then you would have a natural upbeat accent going to the first beat. But he doesn't write that. And in fact the G and the F sharp, he writes a slur underneath those two notes. So meaning the G is the strong note on the upbeat, on the third beat of the bar, and the F sharp, which is actually the main note of the principal beat of the bar, it should be played softer, but that's very difficult because the left hand has its natural accent. So you have to do two separate things. So how I do it is you have an upbeat, strong accent. I just give it tom, ta, tom, but I give also an accent on the first beat, tom, ta, tom. So again, there you need time. So you have this feeling of tom, ta, tom, by yum, ta, tom. And then again Mozart ends the movement. Very beautiful in the left hand. He ends literally the movement in the left hand where the movement is. And listen what happened then. He stands still little. And here also 1, 2, accent on 3. In fact, you have a 2-4 bar structure within these two bars or 3 4s. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And now you understand why he starts with an upbeat, because he is still thinking in this 2-4 structure. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. So that's of course brilliant. But I must admit that the beginning of this piece is one of the most difficult things you can play, because it shouldn't sound complicated. You should feel it, but at the same time all the accents should fall natural. But it's very difficult to play an accent on the third beat while the left hand doesn't have it. Okay. And then I believe you can wait a little bit longer. Let it fall, not too much, but then take it up again. Important here is to feel the figure all the time. So is one. Second time. Third time he's going to expand on that. So that that you have this gradation all the time. So not play it flat. But have something from phrasing, so with accentuation. That's of course easy on the clavichord and on the pianoforte. It's more difficult on the harpsichord. But in fact, this music is taking us really away from the idiom, I don't know in English, of the harpsichord, because you need this accentuation. They wanted to have that. And probably in Munich, I was wondering about that, but the square piano was in that time really important in the midst of the bourgeois, so to say. And you have to feel that Mozart has that feel of that square piano in his mind. So it works great on the clavichord, but some technical things I think more suits a little bit more the piano, maybe. So make gradation. Also the last trill. Also for that trill you need time. It's difficult to play it faster. And then you have such a long phrase and you need some rest. Don't forget the left hand. That's something that in the modern piano class is really taken away. So the left hand is really soft, and then the right hand has this great exposure. But in that time, and certainly also seeing the keyboard instrument of that time, the left hand is very important to have to play it very present. So that's a counter melody here, by the way. Forte piano. Forte piano. Forte, forte. Also here, so these accents, I think in that style more than in Bach's style, I think you can play it almost exaggerated. The music takes it very well. I didn't record it like that, but it's nice in fact. Piano. Forte. Piano. And make a little bit gap between. Because you need a little bit time for, after a phrase like that with a lot of noise, to go back to the contrast, which is a very quiet piano. And also here you have a shift of accent. 1, 1. So again he mixes 3/4 with 2/4. 1. I should play it in 3. It's too long. And then one of the most magical moments you can wish for in music is this. I mean, what a relief then, just you had to wham, bum, bum, bum. But after the finish of the exposition, And then you have, of course, the question of the ornament of the appoggiatura. I don't know how it's generally played. I haven't checked. But for me, if you read Leopold Mozart, and that's a source that's, of course, very much related to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, I believe. Although, if you read books like Neumann, we've talked about Neumann, but I will talk about this book on Mozart in the future again. It's, of course, a great book. But they take a little bit distance from the historical sources, saying that what people have written was not performed like that, and so they really would like to see the appoggiaturas played like grace notes, like instead of. And that's also, I believe, one of those elements that in the 70s, 80s, it's just different than the pianists. Pianists play always. And even scores from the early 19th century where the appoggiaturas and the ornaments were written out in full, which makes sense because there are, if you read Leopold Mozart, but also C.P.E. Bach or Gottlob Tuck, all those sources, they point in the same direction. There is one passage in C.P.E. Bach that where you have this. But for the rest, Leopold Mozart is very clear in that it's a long appoggiatura. Not saying that you cannot play it short, but that's what is written there. And for the Munich sonatas, I take it very close to that because father and son traveled so much, and that book of Leopold was really very important. It was published in a few times and translated in other languages. So it has the importance of C.P.E. Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art das Klavier zu spielen. So, but even then, you won't find all the answers in Leopold Mozart. It's just an indication, and it's very. If you read those sources, you have to study them because it's written a little bit not like we're used to do today. We would organize it very well. They didn't, and I'm making a summary for the out of the notation system of Leopold Mozart. Will be ready when the video on the ornamentation goes online. So that's something you might find interesting because it's always refreshing to read those original sources, but always try to reconstruct the context. But here you have as an appoggiatura, so a G sharp A. There's a small note, and then you have the A. If you would play it as a grace note, so before the beat, I find it a little bit empty. Literally what Leopold Mozart writes is that you play it as long as the appoggiatura. Again, you can have a discussion about it, but it's a way of reading that, and play it even over the bar, because over the value of the note, of the quarter note, so that the A ends actually at the second beat of the bar. And it gives for me a nice effect, and that's the most important thing, so that's the decision you make at the end about the performance. It gives a nice effect because it ties into the accompaniment. And if you could play this on a violin, it would make sense to play it a little bit pizzicato maybe. So very soft. The clavichord is difficult. And here, Wolfgang writes a quarter note, the D to the C sharp. So he makes a mistake according to the book of his father. And there you have it. So his father writes clearly that you should indicate all appoggiaturas, the long and the short ones, so all the ornaments that are accentuated, are played on the beat, have the accent, and the long ones, they have the half of the next value of the next note, and except for the cases where there is a dotted note or a rest or things like that. The short ones have a short value, but they are accentuated. And then you have the durchgehenden Vorschläge that sind, they are the ones that come a little bit before the beat. But Leopold Mozart writes that you should write all the ornaments, the appoggiaturas, as an ornament, and all the grace notes, so to say, as full notes, which also Turk would do and also C.P.E. Bach suggests, but in fact it doesn't make sense, because the long and the short appoggiaturas, you can write them out in full notation system. You can write 4/16 notes. That's what I did from the early 19th century on. But w.a.Mozart said, no, you have to write the B as an ornament. And the reason why is very simple, it's very practical. He said, yeah, you have to indicate that you're making an ornament. So if you would just write that out in full notation, then a musician who played that music, and they didn't practice a lot, they played, most of that music was played à vue, so sight reading, he would add another ornament on top of that. And then you would have two ornaments, two appoggiaturas before the main note, which is ridiculous. So he said you have to indicate that appoggiatura as an ornament. And I believe that just changed that system in the early 19th century, Beethoven already, to a system where they said, no, let's write out in full the appoggiaturas, which makes sense, and write in small the other ones. It's something that I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud now. But applying that system to this passage, I think it's magic. And also the left hand, it has no slur, but I would play it as if it had a slur, those two notes, with a dot on the last note. Comes to an end here. Full orchestra, violas. And very surprising, very modern actually for that time. He just changed key. You can be sure about the fact that when he played that in the salons of the Munich people, that of course nobody was listening like we are listening today on a concert. People were talking, music was just something of the rich, happy few who could afford a musician like Mozart. Was just unimportant. In society they stood, there was a leveling in that time, so they were talking, and there was not that it was very quiet, that it existed that, but I don't think in those midst that they were taking chairs and were quietly listening. So but here you can be sure that Mozart got their attention, because nobody expects that modulation that soon when the exposition comes back. So he must have looked forward, I think, to play that like that. A little bit of tempo, but it's okay, because I believe here in the rest you take it again, you go back to the original piece, original beat, original tempo. And if you play it on the piano, or certainly on a clavichord, give an accent on these syncopations. You have the pam pam pam. That's nice rhythmical. So wonderful music, really. I must honestly say that diving into this music again really made me very happy because I discovered so much new things. And you sometimes hear that all the Kapellbezeichen numbers under 300 are really not. It's not generally not true, but these are all 200 numbers. But if you only had these sonatas from Mozart, you would be a great composer. Then let's see on the time. Let's go very quick in 10 minutes through the last two pieces. Also here that we could cover an hour by itself in this part. So the Andante movement, I used to play that much faster. So it's a little bit like that. And I changed my performance not because of the metronome numbers, but it turns out to come closer to that. But I changed it because of the idea of this imitation of an opera singer. That's really heavy, you know. And all these accents, all these. So here. It's like in the first movement of the E flat. And I leave out the trill in the left hand. It doesn't make sense. It's very difficult. Forte. So that's clearly the introduction. Another. And then suddenly piano, and then you have 30-second notes with a strich, like Mozart writes in his book, which is an accentuated note that's played not legato. Here. And listen how playful that is rhythmically. Serious. Decrescendo, very modern piano. And Mozart uses all the notes of the also new. Haydn wouldn't do that, I think. I think not in that time. Forte. Written as that. Not only with bows, but as a 16th 30-second with a 30-second rest. And you would anyway play it like that. Also, even if it would be two 16th notes with one bow, then we would play the same thing. But he really wants to have it like that. With accents, of course. Its expression is like the Italian opera. In that time it was ruling whole Europe. The whole Europe was all Italian singers were spread around Europe, and that was the style of the day. You could make a text on of that, and you could see actually a big sentence by a singer, and then a very piano-like sentence as an answer to himself. And also here, the singer needs time. Give him that time also on a keyboard instrument. forte. And of course this octave jump is really important. Piano. And the left hand it just continues, which is makes this piece great. Now it comes still. Listen to the silence there. Mozart puts a rest, an organ point on the 8th note rest. And if you prepare well, you shouldn't, it's not necessary to play very fast for that. I would say on the contrary, listen how strange this sounds. I mean strange in the sense of really ear capturing. And he solves this tension by the gliding down of the 32nd. As if this is not opera, I wouldn't know what else. It's almost grotesque. Go to the B flat imitation, and of course he needs to imitate the C or C. Contrast and beautiful modulation. Again, surprise. Nobody would have expected this modulation to A minor. Left hand. And then what you find of young Mozart. I imagine if I play that, seeing father and son in the same room the day before they're going to play this piece, he's saying to Wolfgang, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" And he said, "Of course I will. And very dramatic. And how does he continue? I mean, yeah, that's brilliant. Building up this tension with this strange dissonant chords. And then with and then you have this E. It's almost an anti-climax, but of course this works great here. It's great music. The last part is maybe not so much to say about that. Yeah, you could say a lot about it, but just to not make this session too much longer than 1 hour. The 3/8 I take as really in 1 pulse per bar, but a heavy one. Bum, bum, bum. So 3/8 is different than 6/8. 6/8 is of course in the books 2 times 3/8, but 3/8 you have 1 strong accent every bar, whereas in 6/8 you have a strong accent on 1 and a relatively strong accent, but weaker than the first on 4. It's that simple. If you have a strong accent every 3/8 notes, it's logic that the tempo gets a little bit slower because the tension bow is slower than that. It shouldn't be too much, but that's my feeling. And here it works great, I think, to have this chom drum bum bum dum chom dum. And accent. Counter accent, of course. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And it's great how he comes back to this one. So you have this counter, ba-dum, 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 introducing, of course, what will happen in the bars next. But the left hand stays in the chom. It helps a little bit by bum 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 bum. Here he restores everything. And very playful. Also left hand not too long, because if you made the left hand too long, it's the rhythmical effect is less. So strong, ba-dum, 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 accent. It's like a drum. And actually clever chord sounds like a drum now. Left hand, bass note, very important. Counter melody. Then also here accents. He writes little slurs. There's a difference between the manuscript and the first edition. So the first edition has the long slur over 2 bars. The manuscript has slurs on 3/8 notes. And it comes back also on the left hand, so it makes sense. It really has a function, those slurs. You don't play it just like... It's like adding a little bit of dramatic flavor. And repeat that on the left hand makes it logic. Now. And then. So again, give accents on every time you start. On 2. And soft, loud. Okay. And then the music falls still again. The movement falls still. And what I found very joyful, and that is the last thing that we wrap this up, this session. I could go for ages, on for ages, but I found so joyful is just let the movement fall a little bit under the line of the tempo, and then you feel, hopefully as a listener, where easy come back, and Mozart is giving the impulse by itself. I show you. So we come here from. Wait a little bit longer than necessary. Not necessary, but then you should be able. Then you would be able to do just according to the tempo. I hope it makes sense. You might wrap up a little bit. Again, I slow down a little bit. So that's the way I give a little bit of shading and dynamic to this part and this music. It's all about micro expression. Very little this, very little that. It's like cooking. A little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper. And too much pepper, too much salt, and the meal is destroyed, so to say. And it's the same with music. But right on spot, then it's nice to eat. Okay. I see Henrike also. Oh, welcome here, Henrike. We had a chat call the other day. Luca and Achen Pigeon. I don't know if that's right. This right pronounced. Great. So that's Andy. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I know. Okay, he's working with us now. Great. I don't think I missed something about questions, so I must have been crystal clear. Not surprising, of course. Anyway, this session will go online right after we close. So in different than the recording sessions, I keep them unlisted. You can still reach those if you go to your notification in your mailbox if you have. So the link works, but it's not present on the YouTube Authentic Sound homepage, so to say. So it is not a public video. This one will. So anyway, I'm a little bit tired. It was great going through these pieces together with you. I said this a lot, and it is true. I learned so much from this myself, sharing this with you, and I feel it as a privilege to be able to do that. We will see each other if you want that in 2 weeks on the live stream. Then we will talk more on the Munich sonatas on the D major. So the last one. I'm in the midst of preparing that, and I must say I've underestimated that piece because that's really that's a sonata where Mozart really is leveling up everything. It's a big sonata. It's like a keyboard concerto, almost. Great piece. So we will be covering that in Sunday evening from 2 weeks from now. There is another live stream for the recording of this D major sonata, and that will be not now Thursday, but the Thursday after that. So Tuesday we'll have the release of the G major, and then the week after I will be re-uploading the 1, 2 and 3 that I already did on the channel. I will be covering those pieces again next month as an extension of this Mozart project, and then yeah, that's about it. So that's the schedule. Okay, I hope you have had a nice session. I did. Have a nice evening, night, day, depending on the place on this planet where you live, and we see each other very soon again. Thanks for watching, and see you next time again. Bye.